A solid season for Minnesota in 2024. What about 2025? We're going to give you a very early projected record for this team, and we're going to break down this schedule for the Golden Gophers. Let's take a look at the Minnesota schedule here in 2025. Here's that full schedule, and we're going to start by looking at the non-conference. So this year they're going to play Buffalo, Northwestern State, and on the road at Cal. Buffalo's a decent team out of the MAC. Northwestern State should be an easy win, and then Cal. They do have to go out west, and we saw last year many times when teams traveled across, multiple time zones, they struggled. So that could be a little bit of a tricky game there for Minnesota. Let's look at who they play home and away in the Big Ten. You see all the games here, but in the Big Ten, they'll play Rutgers, Purdue, Nebraska, Michigan State, and Wisconsin at home. Road schedule is at Ohio State, at Oregon, at Iowa, and at Northwestern. So you look at that home schedule, and look at this full home schedule. Minnesota has a chance to potentially be a favorite in every single home game. They don't have any big games, really tough opponents at home. I would say Nebraska probably going to be their toughest opponent. But yeah, you got Rutgers, Purdue, two of the teams near the bottom. Michigan State, Wisconsin also near the bottom of the Big Ten last year. Nebraska, I think, is going to be better this year. I think that'll be a challenge for sure. But at home, maybe Minnesota's favorite in that one. So a very, very favorable home schedule. Road schedule is a little bit tougher. Ohio State and Oregon, both on the road. Those will be, I would say, near impossible for Minnesota to win. Iowa also, I think, will be tough on the road. Northwestern, not too tough of a place to play. Cal, not very tough either. But again, we talked about the travel there, so that'll be interesting. It's I could see very realistically Minnesota winning every home game and losing every road game. They could go 7-5 again, and that could be how it plays out. I don't think it'll play out that just exactly that way, but I think it could. I think it's possible. So let's get into the new and the old teams here in the Big Ten. So the teams that they removed from their schedule from last year: Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Penn State, UCLA, and USC. The teams that they added: Michigan State, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, Oregon, and Purdue. So you like to drop Illinois, you like losing Michigan, you like losing Penn State, maybe even USC. Four pretty good teams that they're going to lose. And then they add, again, Ohio State and Oregon, brutal, but everyone else they add, very winnable game. So I would say it's a pretty even trade, I guess. Again, it's adding Ohio State and Oregon obviously is going to make it really, really tough when they only lose Penn State in terms of those elite teams from last season. But Illinois and Michigan figured to be pretty good this year. So I think it's a pretty even trade. Let's go game by game now and look at the schedule. So Buffalo, that's on Thursday night, August 28th. That's where they will open up the season. They play Northwestern State in week 2. That'll be September 6th at home. Then they go out west to Cal on September 13th. So there's no bye week before that game. They do get a bye week after that game. So travel, coming back home, that'll help out there. But having to go all the way to California, no bye week before, I think that game could be a little bit tricky. So they get that first bye week. They, again, have time to come home and get ready for Big Ten play. They'll play Rutgers on September 27th. Then it's on the road at Ohio State on October 4th. Obviously going to be a very tough one. Purdue on October 11th at home. Back-to-back home games with Purdue, and then Nebraska on the 18th. Then they'll play on the road at Iowa October 25th and home for Michigan State November 1st. So you look at that part of the schedule. 6 games in a row, no bye weeks in there. You do have 4 of those 6 games at home. That's the positive. Ohio State and Iowa will be tough places to play, though. But yeah, I think that's, take out Ohio State, and that's a very manageable stretch. Again, I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State in Columbus, but the other games there, they're going to have a real shot. So, I mean, it's not too crazy to think that Minnesota could be sitting there, with 1 loss going into that second bye week, maybe 2 losses. Maybe they're still in that playoff conversation. Obviously, you want to only have 1 loss because you got Oregon on the road November 15th. That is going to be a very, very tough game. It's actually back-to-back road games because they're going to play at Oregon and then at Northwestern. Interesting that they play Northwestern and they play Northwestern State. Anyways, they'll play Wisconsin on November 29th to close things out. At home, they'll have a real shot to win that one. So again, outside of Ohio State and Oregon, I think Minnesota has a real legitimate chance to win every game on the schedule. Can they actually do that? Obviously, it's going to be tough, but if they do, if they go 10-2, I think there's a real good shot that this team is in the college football playoffs. So how does their schedule stack up with the other teams in the Big Ten? it is a little bit more on the favorable side. Their opponents for this year, well, last season they went 37-44, had a 46% win percentage. Again, that is one of the easier schedules in the Big Ten. And like I said, if you just go ahead and count Oregon and Ohio State as losses, they've got those games on the road. Those are elite teams. But then when you look at the rest of the schedule, those other 10 games, they've got a real shot to win the rest of them. So I think Minnesota's schedule does give them a chance to potentially be a dark horse team in 2025. What will Minnesota's projected record be for 2025? Let's jump right in. And again, here is the schedule. This is the scale that we use. Minnesota is a Tier 3 team. So this is all based off of our tier rankings. Minnesota is in Tier 3, same tier as Iowa, same tier as Nebraska. And the way this works is if you play a team in that same tier, obviously that's going to be a 50-50 game. It'll be in the white, the 40 to 60% range. If they play a team that's in Tier 4, a tier below them, that'll be in the purple, 61 to 70. But if that game is on the road, it then bumps into the white range, the 40 to 60% range. So that's kind of the way it works. And again, this is not based off of point spreads or trying to predict point spreads, but it usually kind of comes out. You can look at it this way. Games in the white, you would expect them to be very, like 3, 4, 5 point favorites in those games, more like a touchdown favorite in the purple games. Blue for the in the blue games will be like a double-digit point spread, more than likely over 80, maybe 20 or more points. So that's just one way to look at it. Let's start with the easy wins for Minnesota. You've got 3 of them: Buffalo, Northwestern State, and Purdue. And again, this is all based off of our tier rankings. There is no human element here. I will not make predictions until after Memorial Day. It's going to be a while before I start making actual predictions. We got to get through spring ball and all of that. This is just a very early projection. Kind of tells you what you can expect. Okay, so 3 easy wins for Minnesota. Now let's go to the games that they, should win. I think they'll be double-digit favorites here against Rutgers. I think that's the only game in this category. So yeah, 4 games there where Minnesota should win. I mean, it would be a pretty big surprise if they were to lose any of these 4 games. All right, next we've got the games in the purple, and you got 4 of these. You got Cal, Michigan State, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. So Michigan State and Wisconsin, they're a tier below Minnesota. They're in Tier 4. Cal and Northwestern, those teams are in Tier 5, but they're on the road. That's why they are bumped into the purple. So, these are games where Minnesota should be 6, 7, 8 point favorites, I would think. But these are absolutely games that they could lose. And if you've got like 4 of these games, the odds are going to tell you that you're going to lose one of them. So they a good chance that they do lose one of these games, but they have also have a chance to win them all. They will be favored in my opinion. So you've got those 4 games in the purple. Now let's go to, all right, so yeah, they're going to be big underdogs, Oregon and Ohio State. I really don't see them winning these games. I think they're double-digit underdogs for sure. Just looking, if I was trying to guess point spreads, these might even be in the red. I think it really just depends on how good Ohio State and Oregon turn out to be this year. And also Minnesota. Obviously, we don't know at this point, but we expect Minnesota, again, to be, a Tier 3 type team, similar to what they were last season. Those will be very, very tough. Again, it's just going to be tough to win those games. If I'm a Minnesota fan, I'm probably just going to go ahead and count those as losses. But that does leave Nebraska and Iowa, and these are your 50-50 games. Again, teams in the same tier as Minnesota. These are the games that could determine the season. If they're able to take care of business in these other games where they're favored. I'm talking about Cal, Michigan State, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. Again, the odds would tell us they're going to lose one of those games. But if they are able to win them all, then they get to these games, Nebraska, Iowa, back-to-back. That's it right there. That if they can win those 2 games, Minnesota all of a sudden becomes a very real playoff contender. And again, this schedule does give them a chance, but it's going to be tough, obviously. And the odds would say they're going to split those games. You've got 2 50-50 games, then the odds would say you're going to win one and lose one. But like I said, if they can win those games, it could be a very special season for Minnesota. So I just said, if you count Ohio State, Oregon as losses, if you split Iowa and Nebraska, and then you've got Cal, Michigan State, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. Odds would say you're going to lose one of those games. So it's pretty easy math here. Projection for Minnesota comes out to 8-4. So actually a little bit better than last year. A very solid season for Minnesota. I think that's a fair projection. A lot of these games, it could go either way with Nebraska, Iowa, and these games in the purple. Cal, Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin. They could lose a couple of those games. They could lose both their 50-50 games. This could very easily be like a 6-6 type season. But if they're able to win those games, obviously then we're talking about 9-3 or 10-2 potentially. So I do think 8-4, a very accurate, a very fair projection for Minnesota. And again, not a playoff run for them if they go 8-4, but still, I would say a pretty successful season in 2025. So what are your thoughts on Minnesota? Let me know your early projection down in the comments below. And just a quick reminder, memberships are now available on the channel. You can go check them out. Link is down in the description. You get early access to videos like this and much, much more. Again, check it out and help support this channel. Become a member today.